Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church, Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Chung. Here's another historic church in Nottinghamshire. This is St Peter's, Sibthorpe. It's, in some respects, a bit like Colston, and we've got a fairly plain nave and a much more impressive chancel. But here, the nave has been partially rebuilt, I believe in the early 19th century rather. An aisle has been demolished on the north side. That's why we've got this wall, we'll see a bit later, where the nave is not really straight. The oldest parts of the building appear to be 13th century, but it's best known for its 14th century work in the chancel, which we shall see later. The interior, it's been reordered many times. The Victorians took out Georgian box pews and replaced them with pews, which have in turn been rendered mobile, so that the building can be used in a more flexible way as a community space as well as a place of worship, which of course is what medieval churches were, so one shouldn't get too upset about that. So let's have a look around this interesting building. As usual then, we begin at the west end, and you can see what I mean about the chancel arch being off-centre. It also leans slightly in a northward direction, I suspect, partly because the north aisle was removed, because these things do have a bit of a holding up the building function. The remains of the box pews can be seen along the walls. There's the largely empty nave, and there's this rather nice Georgian actually, flat ceiling. We proceed here. And this is rather interesting. This is a candle corona converted to electricity. Corona, of course, crown, because of the shape it is. This also is being converted to electricity. Here's a wall sconce, reflector at the back, of course. The pulpit is quite plain, quite simple, quite very nice. Nice pulpit fall as well. The font is 17th century bird bath type. You can see why it's called a bird bath type. And the chancel. As at Colston, we've got these nice big windows, 3 big windows on the south side. Originally there would have been stained glass in all of them. Now there's just a central panel of stained glass in the east. As at Skreveton, there's a nice memorial here. It's still in the chancel, hasn't been shifted out of the way by restoration. And the chancel's nice and big here. This is Edward Burnell, and there he is. He died in 1589, so there he is, and on the back, God grant us all a joyful resurrection. Originally it would have been painted, but now it's plain alabaster. Nice modern pulpit fall there, and we've got the Piscina on the side there, behind a rather nice old bench. And there we have the east window, and the panel is a memorial in memory of Richard de Sibthorpe, the good parson of Beckingham. The Sibthorpe family have been a number of Sibthorpe clergy over the centuries. So then we have, of course, the great treasure here, the thing that people come here from miles around to see, which is the Easter Sepulchre, which I shall explain more fully. So what is an Easter Sepulchre? I have explained this before with a different church in Shropshire, but this is one of the best Easter Sepulchres in the country. It was used in the medieval Easter ritual that on Good Friday the priest would take a wafer from the altar and he would place it with all due ceremony here. This is the tomb, the sepulchre itself, representing, of course, the tomb of Christ. And there it would be entombed to rest until Easter Sunday, when, of course, the Mass would be celebrated. It would be taken out for the Mass there. And we have, of course, elements of Easter morning represented here. We have here the guards, these soldiers. We have here the Virgin Mary, who has unfortunately been rather bashed about a bit. And we have here the Apostle John. And here, rising from the tomb, victorious, Christ with two angels celebrating, waving their censers around, spreading incense all over the place. So that is the Easter Sepulchre. We'll have a closer look at it because it's worth looking at. To say this is one of the best in the country. There's one at Horton near Newark-on-Trent which celebrates as the best in the country. I prefer this one. This one still has paint. It's in a setting in a church that's now very plain. It cannot have been, of course, as plain as it is now in the Middle Ages. There would have been wall paintings, and of course there was an aisle, doesn't exist anymore, and the nave has been rebuilt. But still, we have the guards. Now these are rather interesting. You've got this fellow, of course, here who's got a full face helmet on. This fellow next to him has his visor up. This fellow here and his companion, in fact, neither of them are wearing helmets with visors. They've both just got mail coifs and head protection. There's the Apostle John, and here the Virgin Mary, who has been bashed about a bit. Here we have the risen Christ and the angels. And the paint, again, is a nice touch, because it reminds us these things were painted. They were supposed to be colourful. They were not supposed to be plain. So that is the Easter Sepulchre here, the great treasure. Mentioning things that look at, we find that there is this skull there, which is somewhat surprising. You've got his feet on this great big skull. There we are. So, that's about all for the inside. As I say, it is rather plain, but we will have another look at the north windows just to emphasise that these... Now, the tracery in them does look medieval, so they've been at least partially moved in. But they would originally have been in the aisle that no longer exists. So that, just turn back and have a look at that very, very nice chance on the Easter Sepulchre there. And so we're now outside at St. Peter's. I'm sorry, I'm in the shade. There's some, much of the graveyard is in the shade, so underneath some yew trees. You can see in the background here is this Georgian, essentially, nave. It's a very simple west tower, and this very grand medieval chancel. So let's have a look around. So here we are. This, of course, is the south side. You can see that nice plain west tower, and then that nice Georgian nave. Reminds me rather of some of the early 19th century church in the moorlands. It is early 19th century. And then we've got this lovely decorated chancel, which is the great appeal here. It's the thing that draws people, because as we saw, the nave is very, very plain. It's a good example, and the stonework is beautiful. Clearly a lot of effort's been put into it, but it is very much of its day. The church is right on the edge of the village, but I don't think it always was, and it was next to the manor house, the manorial complex. There is an old manor house, but today, at the old manor house, the original manorial complex, all that survives is a dovecot. And where's the dovecot? There's the dovecot, the famous dovecot in the manorial complex. The lumps and bumps there represent fish ponds and other such. The result is, of course, you can't get too far from the edge of from the east end of the church, because otherwise you end up falling in a very large hole, which I will not do. The vestry, although this is Victorian, there would have been a sacristy on this site in the Middle Ages, and this is where the aisle used to be. You also see up on the tower old roof lines, and they tell us that there was a lower pitch roof So there was a clerestory above the aisle. The piscina for the aisle chapel is still there, out on its own now. And there's the arches, and those windows will have been reset from the aisle. It's not very evident how far the aisle came out, but obviously it came out away. So that, pretty much, we'll just go round the west end. This is in the Vale of Belvoir, spelt Belvoir, but of course if you're Anglo-Saxon peasants, you can't say Belvoir, that's French, and so you've been said to just say beaver, also because beavers were indigenous to Britain at the time, and so, well, they'd say, we don't know what all this Belvoir stuff is, but we know what a beaver is. They make dams and things in our rivers. So that's the west doorway. That is around about 1200, maybe a little bit before, so that tells us that here's a Norman building, late Norman building, later extended. And so there we have it, St. Peter's, Sibthorpe. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.